A book about relationships, diversity, race, gender, and visibility is what we all need in this current world. I'm so excited to see from the blurb that this book by Michelle Obama discusses all these vital topics and much more. I loved reading her memoir, Becoming, and I love to know more about Michelle's take on the concept of unity in diversity, unity without uniformity, and diversity without fragmentation, discussed in this book. So I started reading this book as soon as it was published. It is said that when mainstream media channels are in the trending sessions of social media sites and video sharing platforms like YouTube, we should be careful. Last 2 years, we have seen such a situation multiple times in our lives. Books like How Not to Die by Michael Greger were in the bestseller section, showing how desperately we were trying to find solutions to our problems to stay alive. It is in this scenario of high anxiety and stress that Michelle Obama came up with a book that helps us to stay balanced and confident. Michelle tells us how she was able to get through her life, especially the last 2 years. What is the relevance of this book? This book has an important role in helping people, especially despondent young children and the abject, when the world is going through a phase of recuperation from a crisis now. Young adults are reporting unprecedented rates of loneliness, anxiety, and depression. Researchers estimate that more than 7.9 million children around the globe have lost their mother, father, or custodial grandparent to COVID 19. It feels impossible to imagine the impact of any of this, all those pillars of support now gone. What is this book about? How do we adapt? How do we get more comfortable, less paralyzed inside of uncertainty? What tools do we have to sustain ourselves? Where do we find extra pillars of support? This book has 3 sections and 10 chapters. The author discusses many topics in it, like how to tackle the crisis associated with COVID 19. She is debating proper parenting methods from her mother's and her experience and delineates her idea about friendships and marital life. She gives us many tips from her experience to tackle the crisis. She will also help us to become better human beings through this book. Even though the most important topics like the pandemic are coming in the initial chapters itself, it will take some time for the readers to synchronize with her writing style, unlike her previous book, as she is trying to tackle the most complex problem with the simplest yet most effective solutions. What I learned from this book: how can your partners help you to overcome anxiety? One of the best ways to overcome anxiety is to seek help from your partner if you have an ideal partner. Michelle is so blessed in that case as she has an understanding husband. We can see how Barack helped in removing all of Michelle's anxieties while going through this book's creative process. Like me, he nursed his own private doubts and worries, his own feelings, however occasional, however irrational, of being possibly not good enough. He understood me better than anyone else. After I had spilled all my fears, he simply reassured me that the book was great and so was I. He helped me remember that anxiety was a natural part of doing something new and big. He then wrapped his arms around me and touched his forehead lightly to mine. It was all I needed. What is the power of light we carry? The biggest power of the lights we carry is their ability to show the way and strengthen those who seek it. It is during testing dark times like this that people will need the biggest help from those who have the light of wisdom with them. The author has beautifully depicted our role to contribute through her writing. In my experience, this type of self knowledge builds confidence, which in turn breeds calmness and an ability to maintain perspective which leads finally to being able to connect meaningfully with others, and this to me is the bedrock of all things. One light feeds another. One strong family lends strength to more. One engaged community can ignite those around it. This is the power of light we carry. What is Michelle's important advice to the younger generation? This is one of the most important topics discussed by the author in this book. I like the effort the author put forward in finding out all the essential things that should be addressed during times of crisis and the way she discusses it in this book. When you want to make a difference, when you want to change the world, your mental health will sometimes get in the way, and that's because it's supposed to. Health is built on balance. Balance is built on health. We need to tend carefully and sometimes vigilantly to our mental health. What is one of the greatest lessons that life taught Michelle Obama? Michelle Obama's public speaking endeavors were not cakewalks for her, especially the initial few ones. During the first major speech, behind a massive crowd, there were a lot of difficulties like the teleprompter not working and the confidence monitor becoming obsolete. These experiences taught her one of the greatest lessons in her life. One of the greatest lessons life has taught me is that adaptability and preparedness are paradoxically linked. For me, preparedness is part of the armor I wear. I plan, I rehearse, and do my homework ahead of anything that feels even remotely like a test. This helps me to operate with more calm under stressful circumstances, knowing I will most often, regardless of what happens, find some pathway through. What are Michelle's mother's tips on parenting? This is how wisdom is and should be transferred from generation to generation. All the readers should be thankful to the author for sharing it with all of us through this book. Teach your kids to wake themselves up. It isn't about you. Good parents are always working to put themselves out of business. Know what's truly precious. Parent the child you have got. Come home. We will always like you here. How can a disease of a family member affect the whole family? Michelle tells about how her father and the whole family found it tough to deal with her father suffering from multiple sclerosis. The sight of her strong father finding it difficult to walk even with a cane will be a disheartening experience for the readers to go through. We were starting to understand that dad's illness left us more vulnerable as a family, less protected. In an emergency, it would be harder for him to leap into action and save us from a fire or an intruder. We were learning that life was not in our control. What was the life of the First Lady like? Being the First Lady was a big opportunity and a heavy responsibility. We can see how the author successfully handled that role in this book. As a black First Lady, I was an only. It meant that I needed to help the world adapt and adjust to me at the same time I myself was adapting and adjusting to the role. Barack was doing much the same as president. We were different, yes, but also not really. We had to show this to the people again and again, enduring the challenges to our integrity. We had to stay agile and keep our feet out of the traps. What are the benefits of staying busy? I remember reading once in a book a few years ago that busy is the term given to the lack of priorities. Here the author shows us the other side of this coin regarding the benefits of staying busy. There are tangible benefits to staying busy. As First Lady, I grew accustomed to operating in the realm of big issues, big events, big crowds, big results. And big, of course, went hand in hand with busy. The dizzying pace left me and Barack not to mention those working alongside us, little opportunity to dwell on the negatives. We were a streamlined operation unable to afford any track. In a sense, this became clarifying. It helps us keep our view big and broad and generally optimistic. Being busy is a kind of tool this way. It's like giving yourself a suit of armor to wear. If someone's shooting arrows in your direction, you are less likely to register any hits. There simply isn't time. What is Michelle's opinion about how Trump dealt with the pandemic? Michelle is mentioning about Donald Trump in a few places in this book. She shows the act courage to vehemently criticize him for his ethnic slurs, the Capitol attacks, and the way he dealt with the pandemic in this book. But stuck in my house over the frightening early months of 2020, I saw no logic to any of it. What I saw was a president whose lack of integrity was reflected in an escalating national death count and whose poll numbers were still decent. When Barack Obama published his biography, A Promised Land, in 2020, I was very happy to read and review it as it was an exceptional book. But in one portion of it, I was a little disappointed in the way he lambasted the whole Republican Party just due to the actions of a few people in the party, and I criticized the same in my review at that time. It was unacceptable behavior from someone of Obama's stature when they wrote biographies or memoirs. I don't know whether Michelle read my early review or not, but I am so happy to say that she didn't make the same mistake towards Republicans and she learned from her husband's mistake to execute a spectacular job here in the case of political correctness. She only criticizes those who need to be criticized, and that too in the apt amount. I closely scrutinized the whole book 3 times and I was not able to find a single politically incorrect statement in it. I think it is a quality of a true leader to learn from other people's mistakes, even if the other person is your husband, and make sure that you won't commit the same. I am glad to say that Michelle was able to put forward a strong leadership statement through this book. What is the most intense speech that Michelle ever made in her life? Michelle explains her experiences related to her many speeches, including her first public speech in this book. In one part of it, she becomes particularly vocal about the most intense speech she has ever made in her life. I said as plainly as I could that Donald Trump was not someone capable of meeting the challenges coming at our country and our world. I spoke of the importance of having empathy for others, of pushing back against hate and intolerance, and I urged everyone to vote. In some respects, it was a simple message, and at the same time, it felt like the most intense speech I had ever made. Healthcare workers and COVID-19. The author describes about the vagaries that we had to go through during the pandemic. It is the family that will help us to overcome difficult circumstances. But the pandemic forced the healthcare workers even to discard the comforts of the family as they were afraid for the safety of their loved ones if they went to meet their family. The news of the passing away of the only son of a doctor couple just because they came back from the hospital to their house to meet their son was one of the first scary news we encountered during the initial part of the first lockdown. I read articles about hospital workers who were scared to go home after their shifts, afraid that they might infect their own families. I saw images of mock trucks parked on city streets, concert venues being converted into field hospitals. What is the biggest defeat that the younger generation will have to face according to Michelle? Michelle tells the younger generation about the biggest defeat they will have to face in their life. What becomes defeating is when great becomes the enemy of good. When we get so caught up in the hugeness of everything that we stall out before we have even started. When the problems appear so big that we give up on taking the smaller steps, managing what is actually in our control. Don't forget to prioritize the things you can do, even just to sustain your energy and broaden your possibilities. Maybe it's focusing on finishing high school. Maybe it's being extra disciplined about your finances so that you have more options for your future. Maybe it's working to build sustaining relationships with others so that you have more support over time. Remember that solving big problems or achieving greatness often take years. What is the importance of getting engaged and humorous during the times of crisis? If you are someone who has read the book The Anatomy of Illness by Norman Cousins, you will know the importance of humor in our life. Even though I don't fully support everything that Norman wrote in this book, nobody can deny the fact that humor has a significant role in our lives during times of crisis. We tried out the board games I had bought and did a few puzzles and watched movies on the couch. Anytime we found something to laugh about, we laughed because otherwise it all felt too scary. What makes a few people world leaders? The author discusses a leadership mantra that only a few people have tried to discuss here. She says that you need to be comfortably afraid to become a world leader. The performers who are able to lay their souls bare have learned now to be comfortably afraid. What does it mean to be comfortably afraid? For me, the idea is simple. It's about learning to deal wisely with fear, finding a way to let your nerves guide you rather than stop you. It's setting yourself in the presence of life's inevitable zombies and monsters so that you make content with them more rationally and trusting your own assessment of what's harmful and what's not. When you live this way, you are neither fully comfortable nor fully afraid. You accept that there's a middle zone and learn to operate inside of it, awake and aware, but not held back. What are the difficulties a person will have to face while running for the president? If you are someone who wants to become the US president in the future, this part of the book will be beneficial to you as the author explains all the difficulties and thoughts that a person will have to face while they are running for president. I was not a fan of disruption and unpredictability, and I knew a campaign would bring heaps of it. I knew too that we would be opening ourselves to judgment. A lot of judgment. You run for president and you are basically asking every American to either approve or disapprove of you with their vote. What are the worst words that a person can use to describe about himself in the future? I remember reading in one book that the worst words a person can use in their life is should have. The sentences can be like, I should have worked harder, then I wouldn't have faced the current dilemma. The author shares her should have experience in this book. I didn't want to someday have to tell my daughters that there had been a time when their dad might have become president, that he had had the faith of a lot of people and the courage to try to do something enormous, but that I had jettisoned the possibility pretending it was for everyone's good when really I was protecting my own comfort with how things were, my interest in staying put. What is one of the biggest lessons that Michelle's mother taught her? Michelle's mother had helped her a lot when she was the first lady. She shifted her stay to the White House to ensure everything went well with her daughter and her family. She was one of the main strong pillars of why Michelle was able to perform well as the first lady. One of the most important features of her behavior is that she didn't interfere in any family matters unless necessary. She gave her daughter enough space to behave in their own manner while ensuring she would be there if the need arose. Michelle calls her mother her secret weapon that helped to remove her parental anxiety. In this book, Michelle tells us the biggest lesson that her mother taught her. Because what my mother showed me is that if you try to keep your children from feeling fear, you are essentially keeping them from feeling competence too. Go forth with a spoonful of fear and return with a wagonful of competence. What does defying your fear actually mean? Fear might be false evidence appearing real, but it still has the propensity to disrupt our life in the most negative manner. The author tells us how to conquer fear in this book. Doubt comes from within. Your fearful mind is almost always trying to seize the steering wheel and change your course. Its whole function is to rehearse catastrophe, scare you out of opportunity, and throw rocks at your dreams. It enjoys having you fluttered and doubtful because then you are more likely to stay home on your couch, nice and passive, taking no risk at all. Which means that defying your fear almost always involves defying a part of yourself. What are the affirmations that help Michelle to overcome her fears? Affirmations are positive statements that can help you to challenge and overcome negative thoughts and fears. Michelle has a few unique affirmations that enable her to overcome her fears. I have been practicing stepping back and addressing my fear with familiarity, offering no more than a half friendly shrug and a few easy words. Oh, hello, it's you again. Thank you for showing up, for making me so alert, but I see you. You are no monster to me. How can teachers enhance the academic achievement of children with a simple gesture? Teachers are the people who are helping to build up a strong future by building up strong qualities in the younger generation. Here, the author tells a simple method that all teachers can use to enhance children's academic achievement. How many of us remember the face of that one teacher, parent, coach, or friend who meets us with gladness ahead of all else? Research shows that when teachers take the time to welcome students individually at the door, the level of academic engagement in the classroom goes up by more than 20%, while disruptive behavior goes down. What is the most important furniture in your life? Your answer to it will be your bed, your study table, or the recliner. Michelle has a different answer to it. According to her, the house's most important piece of furniture is the kitchen table. Your kitchen table is your safe haven, a place to rest in the storm. It's where you can pause the endless and exhausting pursuit of overcoming everyday challenges and safely dissect the barrage of indignities that comes your way. It's where you can scream, yell, curse, and cry. It's a place to lick your wounds and replenish your strength. Your kitchen table is where you go for oxygen so that you can breathe again. What can socks teach you in your life? This is a part of the book which shows the brilliance of Michelle's mother. She used something as simple as socks to teach the importance of education to their children. It was done in a really effective manner so that her children never forgot about what she told them. I think Michelle is so blessed to get such an understanding and practical mother. When my father at one point declared that Craig and I should learn to mend the holes in our socks, my mother quickly shot him down, saying, I want them focused on school, not socks, Fraser. That way they will be able to buy all the socks they need someday. I guess you could say that I grew up focused exactly that way, aimed toward a life of sock buying rather than sock mending. What is Michelle's advice to young people who are not married yet? These parts of this book prove that Michelle is not just an intelligent human being but also an amazing mother. She is directly conversing with not just readers but also both her daughters in this part of the book. Her advice to young people is simple but very effective. I want them to know how to navigate conflicts, to understand the heady thrills of intimacy, and to have a sense of what it's like to get your heart shaken up. When and if my kids do choose someone finally to be with for life, I want them to do it from a place of strength, truly knowing who they are and what they need. How should a parent react to children during a crisis? For every child, their superheroes are their parents. So it is essential in the way you behave during the times of crisis. The author perfectly portrays the behavior pattern that parents should asseverate during times of crisis. I said it because I know that's part of the job of being a parent, to project an extra smidge of certainty even as your own knees are buckling a little bit beneath you. Even as you are privately anxious about far bigger things than returning your kids to their friends. Even when worried, you say your best hopes out loud. These are some other concepts that Michelle discusses in this book, like what helped Michelle to deliver the most complicated speech of her life. Why is knitting very important in our lives? What is meant by the gift of absorption? What is Michelle's opinion about the George Floyd incident? What is the importance of celebrating tiny victories? What is the power of small? What are the differences and similarities between fear and anxiety? Why are many people afraid of change? What are the advantages of getting out of your comfort zone? How can you convert utterly uncomfortable moments into thrilling moments? What is one of the most important lessons that Toni Morrison learned about parenting? What is one of the best parts of life of being the first lady according to Michelle? How being tall affects people's confidence? What is one of the biggest mistakes black parents unknowingly make to their children? What is it like being a black student in an Ivy League college in America? What is the secret behind Michelle's success in life? Why is self-respect one of the most critical things in this world? What is Michelle's definition of herself? Is entitlement only a birthright to the privileged? How can some people scar our entire life? What is the most common mistake that people commit related to Ivy League universities? What is the secret that makes Michelle equipped to face all the stress in her life? How can good friends change your life? What is the importance of friendship? What is one of the biggest problems that Americans and people all around the world are facing right now? What is the difference between virtual world friendships and real world friendships? What is the similarity between Barack Obama and APJ Abdul Kalam when they were the presidents of their countries? What is the relationship between friends and barnacles? What is the problem with friendships in the modern world? What is social convoy? How are smartphones preventing us from making friends? How can you build friendships? Even before you start thinking about your marriage, what should you do in your life? What is the secret of the successful married life of Michelle and Barack Obama? What are the most common causes of disputes in marital life and how should we tackle them? What is Michelle's concept of a life partner? What should be a parent's advice to their children regarding their life partner? What is the opinion of Michelle's mother about the White House? How can we make our kids think about what they actually want? What should you do when your children make mistakes? What should we tell our children if they don't like their math teacher? How should you prepare yourself to respond rather than react? What are the best parenting books that will help you to become a better mother? How are some people able to do a lot and lead well balanced lives? What is the importance of confidence in our lives? What does empathy do to our bodies? What should we do when our path toward our ambition becomes tough? What is code switching? What is the most crucial question that inclusivity is facing right now? What is Michelle's best antidote in facing injustice, fear, or grief? What is the importance of integrity in our lives? What is Michelle's opinion about emotions? Are we reacting or are we responding on social media? What are the best means to fight an ugly stereotype? My favorite 3 lines from this book. Maybe it was simply the quote he chose to live by. You fall, you get up, you carry on. Being different conditions you towards cautiousness, even as it demands that you be bold. The challenge in leading a big life becomes trying to find ways to protect your dreams and your drive to remain tough without being overly guarded, to stay nimble and open to growth, allowing others to see you for who you are. It's about learning how to shelter your flame without hiding its light. What could have been better? For some readers, this book looks like a self-help book, with parts mentioning things like the power of gratitude, advantages of knitting, kaizen, even though Michelle doesn't say the name kaizen, and affirmations in some sort of didactic manner, especially in the initial few chapters. I think the author has taken the best approach in discussing the pandemic, its consequence, and how she coped with it in the best way possible. The other criticism that might arise in the book gives parental book vibes, digressing from the main topic in the latter half. Being a parent is one of the roles the author enjoys right now. When she is writing a book about her life, she should definitely write about it instead of dabbling with some issues like some contemporary authors who behave like a dilettante just because they want to discuss trending issues that they have no clue about. What is the difference between playing to win and playing not to lose? This is the actual negative that I found out in this book that should have been avoided. When I wrote the review of the book, Carrie Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid, I specifically mentioned the point that we should never try to lose but always try to win by fire means obviously. But we can see Michelle saying about how they focused on trying not to lose the consequent election for Barack's second term rather than trying to win it. Attempting something to win comes from inspiration, whereas attempting not to lose comes from desperation. The most important quality we should have is the enthusiasm and the attitude to enjoy what we are doing. That will be only present when we are attempting to win. If we are trying something to avoid defeat, we are doing it from a position of weakness. Any gaffe from me could potentially dent Barack's approval rating with the public, which in turn could lessen his sway with legislators and derail his efforts to get important bills passed in Congress, which could then of course translate to losing his chance for re-election. Not only that, but I was aware that if the first non-white president failed or otherwise flamed out, it could conceivably shut and lock the door for future candidates of color. I think one of the biggest negatives in this book and Michelle's life as the First Lady, which is playing safe and trying not to lose in the second term election, can become the biggest positive in her life as she has nothing to prove to others now, as we are all accustomed to Obamas and their potential. So, if Michelle gets elected as the vice president or president in the future, she can function much more freely and efficiently. An adroit, affable person of her stature, wisdom, experience, and acumen can contribute a lot more to the world. Rating 5 out of 5. This is one of the best memoirs that was published this year and is a befitting sequel to Becoming. It is also published at the correct time of the year when we are recovering from the pandemic and going into a celebration mode for the first time during this Christmas time. This book will equip you in the best manner after one of the worst phases that the world has ever seen during the pandemic to face our future life. This book proves that the success of Becoming was not something that unexpectedly happened, and Michelle is a genuine writer who can write many more amazing books. It also demonstrates that Michelle is a great human being, a great daughter, a great wife, a fantastic mother, and most importantly, a great leader who has the potential to lead from the front not just for America but for the whole world. I have also made a different Malayalam review with English subtitles of this book, incorporating different points and perspectives. Please check my Malayalam channel to watch that different review. Thank you so much for watching this review.